Hello and welcome to episode 290 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the actress Tara Fitzgerald. It's a great interview and someone that I've wanted on the podcast for a long time. I've been a huge fan of her work, especially on the TV series Waking the Dead, which I thought was one of my favourites. She was also featured on Game of Thrones, the amazing film Legend. There's so much work, but on today's episode, we mainly focus on one of her most recent films, Kindling. It's such a tremendous film, it's absolutely beautiful. And the good thing is, this is going to be a two-part special for Kindling, because I also have the director of the film coming up on the next episode. But if you haven't seen Kindling, please go and check it out. It's available now on Amazon Prime, Apple TV. Please, you will not regret it. I don't like to ever ruin a film for anybody, but I'll give you a little idea about what the film's about. It's about a group of young men that return to their hometown in order to transform their friends' final days in celebration of their friendship. Honestly, it's one of the best films I've seen this year. The cinematography is incredible, and I can't wait to share this interview with me and Tara very shortly. Just before I get there, I do like to touch base and talk about my last episode. It was my most downloaded episode of the whole year. Yes, I was joined by Alex Winter. It blew up. I've seen so many people tweeting, Facebook comments, Instagram comments about this, and I just want to say a massive thank you for everyone that's taken the time to listen. The numbers were absolutely huge, and the episode is dedicated all around the YouTube Effect, which is his brand new documentary. I was lucky enough to see it and I absolutely loved it, so go and check it out. But today it's all about Tara Fitzgerald, and just before I hit the play button, let's give a quick shout out to the podcast sponsor, Richer Sounds. Without those guys, this podcast wouldn't be able to run, and if you're in the market for a new TV or home cinema surround sound system, check them out. Right, let's get to the interview now. So here's me and Tara talking all things movie and TV. Hi Tara, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm well, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
What I like to do with all my guests is take it right back to the very start. I've done nearly 270 episodes now with all different people from all different walks of life, but I always find it fascinating on maybe what were the first films that you watched as a kid or TV shows that made you fall in love with the idea of being an actor?
Yeah. The very first were, Hollywood musicals, the early musicals. And my hero, I was sort of obsessed with him, was Fred Astaire.
Amazing.
And so all of his films, my uncle, so we all lived together in a flat when I was a kid for a few years, my aunt and uncle and my mum and my sisters. And he had these old LPs, old 33s. And we used to play them. And then he used to go. And I used to pretend I could tap dance, and I really couldn't, but I really felt I could. And so that was very, very important to me, early on. And the joy that I had, I've been spending the whole of my life trying to match that joy again, I think,
With those sort of early musicals, and they're so sort of extravagant and so big and so electrifying, did you at that point think, I want to do that? Or were you just mesmerized by all the colors and the music and all the kind of the scale of everything? Or did you ever even believe that that's something that one day you could hopefully achieve?
Yeah, I don't, it's so interesting. I don't, I wanted to be in that world, I wanted in those worlds for sure, and I completely suspended my disbelief, whereas my sister, for instance, never got on with musicals and always used to say, but they all know the same, how would they, it's not possible. So she always interrogated it in a very sophisticated way, whereas I was just delighted to go into that, to swim in that world, but I wanted more than anything definitely to be an actor. I didn't see how I could, I think, probably. Yes, I wanted it, down to my toes, but I wasn't sure if I would be able to. I think very early on, I wasn't sure I had the requisite kind of physicality or, and I didn't have a singing voice, so that wasn't going to work.
So did you kind of have a family that was supportive in that way, that kind of would go with the idea that, my daughter wants to become an actor, knowing that that's such a hard world to get into? Because some actors I've spoken to, their parents were dead against it because it wasn't a real job in their kind of eyes, and they were brought up thinking, well, it's something that you could maybe fall back on, but you need to go out and go down another avenue. Or were you just so focused on wanting to do that, your family were like, let's kind of help her achieve that dream?
Yeah, I was very fortunate because I came from a sort of artistic and theatrical background. My mum's side in Ireland, they've been very involved in the theatre there. My great aunt was an actress called Geraldine Fitzgerald, and she was part of, she worked with Orson Welles, his theatre company,
Oh,
and
wow.
she went over to America, and she was in Wuthering Heights with Laurence Olivier, and she was quite a big fromage at that time, and so I was very aware of her, and I was very supported by my. I don't think it was any great surprise really when this sort of 4-year-old with this voice, booming voice, to be an actor. I don't think that was any great surprise. But then I think along the way I had encouragement towards other ideas. What about trying something else just in case? There was no backup plan, basically, and I think a lot of actors say that. If I failed at this, I don't know what the hell I would have done.
No,
It
it's
had to
quite daunting, isn't it, really? Because I've literally, like I said, I've done over 200 episodes, and nearly everyone said the same. Like, they just couldn't imagine a normal 9 to 5 in an office or doing just a normal job because they only want to do that.
Yeah, I think it's sort of in you, I guess. I
Yeah.
guess it's in you. It's like with you,
I was literally about to say, like, I can't imagine. Don't get me wrong, I can't pay every single bill in the house off this all the time, but I
No,
can't imagine now doing a different type of job where I'm not doing something that I love and that I'm passionate about every day. Because in my head now, it's like I'm 41 now, and in my head, I'm like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to do something I'm not enjoying. That every day I'm kind of doing something for someone else. I want to at least enjoy what I do, considering it's such an
yeah,
amount of my day.
yeah, exactly. And you make, there are big sacrifices that you might have to make because of that. And a lot of people, I've spoken to a lot of people, and they've said, but how do you live with that uncertainty? And what about, financially? How do you know? Because it can go, it can be so zigzaggy.
Yeah.
So how do you live with that? And I said, well, it's part and parcel of it, but I would rather live with that sort of slightly dangerous sense
Yeah.
of it, yeah, of existence than the other thing.
I
But
think it kind of prevents you from getting complacent as well, because you can
yeah,
sit there and just do a same job, knowing it's the same money every week, the same hours, and it can becomes quite monotonous. But I feel like I don't know what I'm doing next week, and I'm hoping that something comes in, and when it does, I'm like, brilliant, and it's this little achievement every now and then that keeps you kind of excited, and like it's one big adventure.
yes, exactly. That's what I feel, is that I'd rather live on that edge of, the razor's edge.
Yeah. There's
I'd
something
rather
they'll
live there.
probably do some tests on us one day and be like, you two are just insane. Like, why are you doing this? Like, one week you can only have beans on toast and then you can go to a nice restaurant. But I'm like, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So when was it? Was there a turning point that you remember that maybe you'd gone to a few auditions or a certain role that you had landed that you then thought, yes, this is the moment that I can kind of feel that it's definitely being taken seriously by my family and everyone around me, and that it is something that I can definitely make a living off.
Was there one point? I think when I got into drama school, probably that was a sort of a sense of arrival,
Yeah.
because until that moment, and I'd failed to get into a couple of drama schools, so I was beginning. It was feeling quite tenuous. My link to the reality of acting. And then when I was accepted by the drama centre, then I thought, aha, at last, I'm able to cement this idea. It has some possibility, and someone's taken me seriously. Yeah.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
and then on leaving, I was really lucky because I left with a job, which is just,
Unheard
it,
of.
it was unheard of. Yeah. And a very good job. I was getting ready for, you know, to do anything to get my equity card, because in those days you couldn't work without an equity card. And so I knew people who did a lot of theatre and education in order to do it. And, so I was preparing myself for a tour of a puppet show or something, and not expecting to get a lead in a British film, which is what happened.
And when you look back at some of your previous roles, stuff like Brastoff, Waking the Dead, Legend, they're incredible roles, but each role for me is very different. You're very versatile as an actress, and I think you've never kind of played it safe and played the same sort of role. If you look at every single role you've done, they're completely different, and from one film to another, there's not even a slight sort of similarity. You've gone completely on all different directions, and I think that's a massive credit to you. But does that kind of keep it exciting? Does that keep it kind of, for you, just challenging all the time to get into such a different character for every performance?
Well, firstly, thank you for saying that. That's a lovely thing to hear. It's part of what we were just discussing. I think that I like the danger of the exploration of something fresh and different, and I do try and find, not just physically, because it's I can put on a wig and look perhaps like somebody different, but that's not the same as being somebody different, and it's that really interests me.
Yeah.
And what makes a character tick, there is I went to a very good drama school, and that was very much, what does your character have for breakfast? Well, you could say all of that is very indulgent on one level, but if you go really genuinely into this stuff, it can produce something very interesting, I think. And you see actors who explore the psyche, of being, really being somebody else. And that's it's got again it's a dangerous place to go a little bit.
Yeah.
Can be. And again, I find that quite fascinating.
And is there quite a difference? Because obviously people that are trying to get into the world of acting, some people want to get into just TV or some people want to get into film. But because you've done these big British films, you've done some of the stuff overseas, but with something like Waking the Dead, where it's a really long process of the character, where each week you've got this chance to kind of really grow as a person and an actress and be around the same cast and be like a family. Is that something that you'd really kind of encourage people to do? Because it's such a, I don't know, I respect Waking the Dead so much because it went on for so long, and in a world that we're living in right now, it would be cancelled after one season on Netflix. So it's so good to go back on these shows and see that something had that longevity.
Yeah. Well, that show, actually, I mean, it was quite masterful in lots of ways, that show. I mean, it was incredibly well thought out and written, and and the stories, each story is very, very watertight.
Yeah.
Let's say, they all stand up. They're not, if you pick them apart, they're proper mysteries. There aren't big loopholes everywhere. They were really, really worked on. And we went through many, many drafts, and Trevor Eve was quite brilliant in how he sort of had an overview of it. He knew that sort of world incredibly well. So I walked into that. I was very lucky to have that, and the care that was put into it, and I don't think they've dated that much. I mean, maybe
I was literally about to say, I sometimes go on Amazon, or I think it's Amazon Prime, and I'll randomly just put an episode on, and it doesn't look dated. And I love lots of TV, but you put Twin Peaks on, or you put on the X-Files, and it's of that era. But
yeah.
you could genuinely think it's on BBC One this Sunday, and you wouldn't know it hadn't been filmed, 15 years ago, or 20 years. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think, and maybe the science, I'm sure it has. Of course, it must have advanced quite significantly. And we're all much more aware of DNA testing.
Of course,
now,
yeah.
Pandemic and things like that. We have a different relationship, perhaps, to science, than we did. But as you say, the overall timbre of the pieces and the connections that were made, I think, are still very. I think they're quite timeless. A lot of the stories are quite timeless, which is a expression that's bandied around a lot. But my sense is that it does stand up still. A lot of them do stand up still. They were just very well made, and they were shot on film. They were, I
Yeah,
think, I'm right in saying they were the last BBC shows to be shot on film.
that's beautiful as well. I love all that. I don't get me wrong, I love technology and everything else that comes with it, and
Yeah,
we have to accept it, but sometimes I just love the old classic methods.
yeah, yeah.
And at the moment, we're promoting Kindling, and I was lucky enough to see an advanced copy of this. So I know it's coming out in the next couple of weeks, but I was lucky enough to see it. And I make sure that when I do interviews, I never spoil anything. So I don't talk about a specific scene or something because I want people to go in completely blind. But what I will say is it's probably the most uplifting film I've ever seen about death.
Oh,
I thought genuinely it was beautiful. The cinematography is something that I think should win every award going. I think the acting performances were incredible. There's not one weak link, and it's just an incredibly beautiful film that you can see that someone's put their whole heart and soul into, and you must be so proud to be part of this incredible film and journey.
I am. I really, I'm so pleased that you felt that about that. I mean, I think it's, yeah, I think it's really a special film.
It really is. There's sometimes a film comes along. I remember when Boyhood came along, and I was blown away. Obviously, it took 12 years to make, but it was one of those films that stuck with me for ages. And then I think I saw something like Whiplash, and there's these films that come through every now and then. Submarine was another one, and they stay with me, and I can revisit them again and again. And I know that in the next few years, I'll be revisiting this and still feeling the same as I did the first time I watched it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you completely. It's, I'm sure you can imagine being in something. Sometimes it's very hard to forget that you're in it,
Yeah.
But actually, I just didn't think about that. My ego just sort of dropped off. Or it wasn't about that. More I was interested in. It's so nuanced, isn't it? And it's so honest, and it's so from the soul. It feels like
It's just real.
yeah,
You don't need all
real.
these special effects and green screens, and it's
No,
about the performances. Banshees of the Inisherin this year I saw as well, and it was just
yeah,
about the acting performances, the cast, the crew, the scenery. But the cinematography for me just stood out, and I think you could pause this film at any moment, print it out, and it would make a poster. It's
uh,
absolutely stunning.
that's such a lovely way. Yeah, I. It was a very sort of. It was a very special time that we shot it. In this sort of strange in between pandemic era that we were in. But from none of us quite knowing what was coming next. That sense, and yet that also fed into the theme of the film, and also the fact that it was so beautiful gave it this otherworldly quality, that
Yeah.
we were dealing with this oppressive and difficult and painful story, of loss and adaptation to very, very difficult ideas, and yet surrounded by this, Wizard of Oz technicolor beauty, and the inside house and the outside fields and all of that sense. And I think that's absolutely captured, as you say, in this film. The cinematography is exceptional.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful, and I'm so proud of it. And I really hope it does really well, and lots of people get to see it because it might be one of those gems that just not everyone knows about. And then when they start to tell their friends, they tell their family members, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And before you know it, it's getting the credit it deserves.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do. I'm so thrilled that you say that. I think it deserves that because it comes from, it's such a personal thing to and he's an auteur,
Yeah.
Connor, and it's such a personal thing to him, and he's so generous in how he's shared that. And I think that really is something you can feel in the film.
And something I was thinking when I was just preparing for you today, I was thinking to myself, you've directed a few shorts, haven't you? I think there's three or
Yeah.
four titles. Is it something that you'd like to then continue with? I know a lot of actors go into that transition of moving over to a director, or because they've had the experience in front of the camera, they can then step behind the camera with that knowledge and respect. Would you like to be involved in one day doing a full feature or doing more directing as life goes on?
Yeah, I would. I really would. I mean, to do, yeah, but then I see something like this film and I go, but I'm not sure I could ever do that. Do you see what I
But you're never going to know unless you try.
Yeah. It's, real talent is very humbling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder, but it also I think it's important that you identify what you're saying. I think if you get that right, if I'm going to do a feature, I've got to make it because I really feel I've got to tell the story, which is a cliche, but it also is true. I don't want to waste anyone's time with something that doesn't have absolute meaning to me.
And it's quite transparent, isn't it? I think if something isn't sincere, you can tell a film that someone's poured their whole heart into, or you can tell someone that's just took a paycheck and gone, oh, well, I'll just do a film. And there's a big difference. And I think some people forget how transparent it is, and the fans out there do know this. And that's why, when we're sitting here today talking about Kindling, we can talk so highly of it because it's someone so passionate, because there's a story, because there's a brilliant cast, and there's nothing there that says to me this is made just for a bit of fun or a project.
No, exactly, and I think you're right. I think spectators, audience are very intelligent and can smell it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I think this is the beauty, is that he did trust his actors, and you have someone like George and Mia's relationship, they're, I mean, I can't think of a comparable relationship, that is so wise and so well explored and moving.
Yeah, that's the word, moving. What I do on the podcast, and it's my final question for you today, and I've done this to every guest that's been on. I've had Anthony Hopkins, Mads Mikkelsen, Aubrey Plaza, all these different people from all different walks of life, but I ask the same question to close the podcast. I am going to put you on the spot, but what I like to do is make the podcast as original as I can by letting the guests choose the outro piece of music that's played. So as this interview is all edited and wrapped up for the world ready to listen to, you get to choose the final piece of music or song or something that means something to you that plays as the episode ends. And I'd wonder, by putting you on the spot, when I ask the question, what's that kind of first song that comes to your heart and soul that you think would be perfect for today?
Can we have Top Hat by Fred Astaire?
Of course we can, and it loops perfectly all the way around. I love the cycle of that. But yeah, is that because of it reminds you of childhood and there's those early memories?
Yeah, and happiness and yeah, everything, the possibility of film for me in those.
What a perfect little 360 circle there. I love that. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I love all your work, and I'm a huge fan. And to see you in Kindling and see this incredible story and know that I can then share this with people is genuinely just, it doesn't feel like work. It's like a dream come true. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the amazing Tara Fitzgerald. An amazing actress, and like I said at the start, someone that I've wanted on the podcast for a long time. It's so good to have her on. I'm so grateful for it, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as me. As I said at the start of today's episode, this is actually a two-part special dedicated to the film Kindling. The first one is obviously here today with Tara, but I've got a second part coming out with the director, Connor O'Hara, who also is unbelievable and a great guest, and I can't wait to share that with you. In the meantime, go and check the film out. Like I said, you can stream it now and you will not regret it. And if you do, please let me know how much you've enjoyed it, because that's the best thing about doing a podcast. If someone checks out an album or a film or a book from your recommendation or a guest you've had on, that is the ultimate pat on the back. So please let me know. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then please, in return, because the podcast will always remain free, hit that share button. You can do this on markandme.com, and there's links to Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All these shares that you do go a long way, and honestly, just someone on your timeline might see that picture and then suddenly check the episode out. They go back and they're suddenly a fan of Mark and Me for life, and that's what I rely on. I haven't got a massive budget. I don't get paid for this. It's all about doing it because I enjoy it, but I really need your help in sharing these episodes. I'll be back very soon, before you can even blink, with the next episode, and as I said, it's the director of this film, Connor O'Hara. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
just got an invitation through the mails. Your presence requested this evening. It's formal, top hat, white tie, and tails. Nothing now could take the wind out of my sails. Because I'm invited to step out this evening with top hat, white tie, and tails. Oh, I'm putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing off my tails. I'm duding up my shirt front, putting in the shirt studs, polishing my nails. I'm stepping out, my dear, to breathe an atmosphere that simply reeks with class. And I trust that you'll excuse my dust when I step on the gas, for I'll be there, putting down my top hat, mussing up my white tie, dancing in my tails. Putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing off my tails. Yeah, I'm duding up my shirt front, putting in the shirt studs, polishing my nails. I'm stepping out, my dear, to breathe an atmosphere that simply reeks with class. And I trust that you'll excuse my dust when I step on the gas, for I'll be there, putting down my top hat, mussing up my white tie, and dancing in my tails.